Have you ever felt forgotten, betrayed, or that life was unfair? Imagine being sold by your own family, falsely accused and thrown into prison, yet still rising to the highest position in the land. This is the story of Joseph, a man who went from a pit to the palace because of God's plan. Stay with me to the end because Joseph's journey holds a powerful message for your life today. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob, but he was the firstborn of Jacob's beloved wife, Rachel. Because of this, Jacob favored Joseph more than his other sons. He even gave him a beautiful coat of many colors, a symbol of honor. But favoritism breeds jealousy. Joseph's brothers despised him. To make matters worse, Joseph had two prophetic dreams. In one dream, his brothers' sheaves of grain bowed before his sheaf. In another, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed before him, symbolizing his parents and brothers. Instead of rejoicing, his brothers hated him even more. They said, "Will you really rule over us?" Genesis 37:8. Joseph didn't realize it yet, but his dreams weren't just about him. They were God's plan to save a nation. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers who were tending the sheep. But when they saw him coming, they plotted against him. "Here comes the dreamer," they mocked. They ripped off his coat of many colors and threw him into a deep, dark pit. Instead of killing him, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelite traders passing by. So they sold their own brother for 20 pieces of silver. They dipped Joseph's coat in goat's blood and took it back to their father, letting Jacob believe Joseph was dead. Betrayed by his own flesh and blood, left to die, sold as a slave. How could Joseph's dreams ever come true now? But little did he know, God was still working. Joseph was taken to Egypt and sold to Potiphar, a high-ranking officer in Pharaoh's army. Though he was a slave, Joseph remained faithful to God. He worked diligently, and God gave him favor. Potiphar saw that everything Joseph touched prospered, so he put him in charge of his entire household. But just when things seemed to get better, another trial came. Potiphar's wife tried to seduce Joseph, but Joseph, a man of integrity, refused. "How could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" Genesis 39:9, she falsely accused him, and Joseph was thrown into prison. An innocent man once again suffering injustice. Many would have given up, thinking, "Where's God?" But even in prison, Joseph remained faithful, and God was with him. In prison, Joseph met two of Pharaoh's officials, the cupbearer and the baker. Both had troubling dreams, and Joseph, through God's wisdom, interpreted them. The baker would die, but the cupbearer would be restored to his position. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him. But 2 years passed, and Joseph remained forgotten, until one day God's plan was set in motion. Pharaoh himself had two disturbing dreams. No one in Egypt could interpret them. That's when the cupbearer finally remembered Joseph. Joseph was brought before Pharaoh. He boldly declared, "It is not I, but God who will give Pharaoh an answer." Joseph explained the dreams. Egypt would face 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. Pharaoh was amazed and saw the wisdom in Joseph, so he made Joseph second in command over all of Egypt, from prisoner to prime minister. Only God could write such a story. Years later, the famine struck. People from all over came to Egypt for food, including Joseph's brothers. They didn't recognize Joseph, but he recognized them. He tested them to see if they had changed. Eventually, he revealed himself, and they were terrified. But instead of revenge, Joseph said these powerful words, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to save many lives." Genesis 50:20. He forgave them. He embraced them, the family was reunited, and God's plan was fulfilled. Joseph's story teaches us that even when life seems unfair, God is always at work behind the scenes. From the pit to the palace, Joseph remained faithful, and in the end, God's purpose prevails. No matter what trials you're facing today, remember, God can turn any situation around for His glory. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who needs encouragement today.